I'm autistic, so I'm already worried about saying like the wrong things.
At least we're both autistic, so a sense of camaraderie that we both will probably say the wrong thing at some point.
Appalachian sunrise meets my skin. Even with my eyes still closed, I can feel it coming in. Golden, golden, I'll follow only golden, golden, golden things.
So, hi, you are Ross from the We Yarn Company.
Yes, that's me.
And can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your business?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm Ross from the We Yarn Company, and I'm a hand dyer of yarn. So you can see, kind of had a competition between both of us of who had the most yarn in the background. But I, I think I win.
Yes, you do.
Uh, so yeah, I think in in August now it'll be 3 years since I started my own company. So
That's
yeah, I just
amazing.
dye yarn and mess around and hope for the best.
And so did you end up in the Netherlands because of your partner's Dutch, right?
I met him once I moved here. I came here to
Oh.
study. So
Oh, okay. And you just stayed.
yeah, I never finished my
Oh,
master's degree and then just stayed here.
yeah. Do do you go back to Scotland a lot or
Not so
not?
much. I don't really have much family there anymore. Although my sister's still there, but Um, we were there a couple of weeks ago for like 3 weeks, and we kind of did a bit of traveling around, which was really nice.
Yeah. That's amazing. What made you get started with dyeing yarn?
Well, I started knitting again while I was doing my master's. I think like a lot of people that are neurodivergent and that end up in university end up struggling at a certain point with like stress levels and stuff because it's
Yep.
just really not an environment that's well suited to neurodivergent needs. So
Yep.
I took up knitting as a way of relaxing because I saw a fellow student was knitting all the time, and I remembered sort of being taught as a kid how to knit by my gran and my mum, and I thought that looks fun. And
Yep.
then I kind of fell down the rabbit hole of, oh, then let's go to the fancy yarn shops, and then you see all the fancy yarn. So I was sort of knitting and buying yarn for a few years, and I had a few sort of crappy jobs, and I wanted to do something
Yep.
myself. So the original idea was to open a yarn shop, but that never happened because you need a lot more money to start a yarn shop, I think, than you need to do as a dyer. After sort of 3 years now, the yarn shop bit's coming into play is now I kind of have the ability also to buy in other yarns. So I'm started to stock different yarns from Scotland and stuff that you don't see so much in the Netherlands. So that's nice that then it's a
Oh.
combo of like my own stuff and then also stuff that you might find in a normal yarn shop.
Yeah, I think a lot of us in the like neurodivergent fiber arts business have a very similar story. Like a lot of us have higher education degrees and we're maybe in a field where there's like a high level of burnout. I also had a similar story too where my great aunt taught me to crochet as a kid and then I would pick it up and off and on, but really started seriously crocheting in law school because I was so stressed, like what you were saying.
Yeah.
And it was such a stress relief for me. And at the time I didn't even know that I was autistic or ADHD. And it's crazy to learn like, oh, that was a form of stemming. That was me stemming and stuff. But that's awesome. So I absolutely love your yarn and your colors. Oh my gosh, the way that you like you just had a post yesterday with this beautiful like coral and red yarn. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, they pair so well together and I love that. That is it's such a talent. I absolutely love the like you definitely have an eye
I
for
always
colors.
I always feel like a bit, yeah, not everyone has imposter syndrome, but especially when with things like that, I always feel like a major imposter because I think so many people that end up becoming yarn dyers or designers have a background in some kind of art or design, whereas I
Yeah.
don't. I was
Yeah.
never, I was terrible at art at school. I can't draw, I can't paint, I can't do anything artistic other than dye yarn. And I only kind of found out that I could dye yarn by kind of just fucking around and finding out and hoping for the best.
Yeah, because it certainly it takes an eye to put certain colors together and stuff. And I love that you play around with both neons and pastels because I love both of those. I feel like for so long people were either like, oh, you either like neutrals or you like neons or you like pastels. And I'm like, I want them all together. Like,
I like that too. And I feel like some
yeah.
dyers, you see some dyers and they really, I mean, I yeah, I go through different phases where maybe I'll be really into like dark and moodier colorways, and then other times it's like I want bright neon stuff. And but I feel like some dyers end up putting themselves in a bit of a box where they only dye one, and I can understand that if that's what your customer ends up liking, that of course you're going to keep dyeing things that sell for you. But I was, yeah, I find it
Yeah.
strange when I see some dyers that only maybe dye like in a specific way, and they don't seem to want to do anything other than that. Because I always think, well, you have such an endless sort of possibilities at your fingertips, but yet you end up dyeing the same thing over and over, or very similar things.
Do you keep your regular colorways? Like, do you have a certain set where you always like keep these your core colors and then you do like collections seasonally or something like that?
Mm, I kind of do a bit of everything. So I am diagnosed as autistic, but I also probably definitely have ADHD, but it's just impossible to get a diagnosis, especially to get a diagnosis here in the Netherlands.
Oh,
But that's kind of why I always end up adding new bases. So every couple of months, I'll end up with a brand new base. Uh, so there's certain colorways that people always really like, and yeah, that I tend to dye on everything. But also being like one person, I don't have as much time as I would like to do maybe restocking of my own things.
yeah.
So there's often a lot of things that are out of stock, but I try to keep everything repeatable because I don't want people to feel as if they have to buy it now or forever lose their chance.
I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
I get very easily distracted by new things. So new bases, every 5 minutes, I've got a brand new base that I'm adding.
Uh-huh.
And I also like to do themed collections as
Yeah.
well. So yeah, a bit of
Yeah.
everything. So it's always the same process in the sense of, you're dyeing yarn is a generally quite a monotonous thing in a way,
Yeah.
which can be quite relaxing. But yeah, then you have the kind of uh the difference in the excitement of playing around with different colors and seeing how different pigments interact. So as you say, it is spontaneity, but in a controlled manner. So then it kind of
Yeah.
both ends of the
Yeah,
spectrum.
exactly. No, and I love that too, that you are trying to, for people to not feel like, oh my gosh, I have to get this or it's gone forever, because I definitely will impulse buy those yarns, like those like limited edition things and stuff. And then, yeah, and I'm trying to be better about picking out my project, then buying the yarn just from like, yeah, it's hard. It's really hard, especially like when you go in person and you'll see a yarn and you're just like, oh man, I gotta get this. But that's awesome. So
Yeah,
what are you working on now? Like what's your work in progress?
dye wise or craft wise.
Both actually. I'd love to hear both.
I always have. I think again, probably probably from most definitely being ADHD, I tend to start new projects, and especially because I like knitting garments, that I'll get like one third of the way through, and then once I understand the construction or whatever new technique it is, that'll be it. Mind of all dopamine, and it'll go in a cupboard for
Yeah.
many months until I can be bothered going back. But right now,
Yeah.
I'm knitting something with my new yarn base, so another new yarn, but this one I had kind of custom made for me. It's really
Oh,
hard to show up in this camera because the lighting's not the best in
I
here.
love that though. Costa lace, right? Is that how you say it? Is that
Yeah,
your? Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's kind of like a yellow held together with like a rainbow.
Oh, I love that. What are those two colors called?
One's called The Swan with a double N, and it's named after William Dorsey Swan, who was one of or maybe the first drag queen in recorded history. And it was someone who was previously enslaved in America, and certainly the first person historically to be described as a queen of drag. So I did like a drag
That's
king
amazing.
collection a while ago.
That's amazing. I love that. That's
And
awesome.
then the other one's called Flaxen, just because it's yellow, and that's an easy name.
I love your yarn names, by the way. When I was telling my husband who I was interviewing today, I was like, it's because he's a big Lord of the Rings fan, and sometimes when I come across a beautiful yarn when I'm like perusing online, I'll be like, "Oh my gosh, Joe, you have one I think called Gandalf the Gay."
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
was telling you, I was like, it's Ross from he's Scottish, but in the Netherlands, and he has that one yard called Gandalf the Gay, and he was like, oh, okay, like because he's not
yeah.
a yarn knitter or crocheter or anything. So I definitely need to place an order of Gandalf the Gay just for my husband's sake. So
I have a new colorway called Ents, named after the Ents. So
oh
it's
man,
not on the
that's like
website
his
yet. I
favorite.
dyed it for the festival that I was doing at the weekend, so it needs to go on the website when I have time to take pictures. But
Oh man, I'm definitely gonna have to get that one because that's like his favorite character because he's super chill like that.
yeah,
He's very much like an int. Like,
yeah.
so I'm gonna have to make him a sweater out of that.
I'm also very guilty myself of buying yarns purely for the name. So I always try and give things like stupid names or funny names or sometimes
Yeah.
horrible names. I feel like a lot of yarn stuff's really sort of twee and sanitized.
Yeah.
Uh, and people give shit really boring names like, I don't know, Mist and which
Yeah.
I mean, but definitely behind me, there's some that have like boring names because sometimes you have to name like 50 colors and you're like, shit, I need a word to put on this. But
Yeah.
especially when I do like themed collections and stuff, I try and put some thought behind them and I try to make them funny. So
Yeah.
sometimes I tell my partner what I'm going to call things and it's just like a look of dismay because they're just like, why the fuck would you call it something so stupid? But
That's funny. Does your partner do they knit or crochet or dye yarn with you?
not dye yarn. So everything that I dye is completely done by me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, occasionally, well, not occasionally, but when I do markets and in-person events and stuff, he'll come and help, which is
Yeah.
very nice. But
Yes.
he's recently started knitting, so I kind of got him. Well, I got him into it by telling him to do it because I thought he would enjoy it. But I have no patience, and I'm not a good teacher. So he'll ask me how to do things, and I'll be like, I don't fucking know. Go on YouTube. And as someone who learned from YouTube myself, I'm like, even though it's things that I do know how to do, I'm like, I can't be arsed explaining it to you. Go, just YouTube it.
Yes. That's hilarious.
He's become like a better knitter than me, and he actually finishes things. So
Oh,
it's nice because I can occasionally get him to make me a sample for the shop that I can. So I'm like, can
there
you make
you
me this?
go.
So
That's
it's nice.
awesome. It's nice to have like a support person too to help you at markets because that's
Yeah,
like one area because I don't typically sell my finished makes. If I get to the point where I've got like a bunch of stuff stocked up, then I'll like sign up to do the occasional market to sell my
yeah.
finished stuff. And when I have done them, which hasn't been very often, it's exhausting. I don't know how you guys, and by you guys I mean the dyers, do the markets, the festivals and stuff because I mean it I'm like flat out for like a week afterwards. It's crazy. How
That's
do you deal with like balancing that?
that's generally how I am as well. And then I'm also really good friends with another couple of dyers, Undercover Otter and Nocturne Studio, and both of them are also autistic and ADHD, and we all have the same experience. So it's nice because also we act as a bit we all kind of know each other really well, so we can kind of see each other's triggers and stuff, and we'll help each other out in different ways. To
Oh,
So we often do markets together as like the three of us, plus my partner.
mm-hmm.
Also having my partner there helps a lot because he's very neurotypical, so he's much better at speaking to people, and also the the nice thing is most of the markets that I've done have been in the Netherlands, so people generally will speak Dutch, and because some of the public's older, they don't always speak the best English.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit of a blessing and a curse of having a language barrier, because sometimes when there's a language barrier, it's nice because I can quite easily tune out. Less so now that I speak a bit more of it, but generally I can tune out the background noise if it's in Dutch. Whereas when I'm back home and there's lots of background noise and conversations around me in English, because my sensory perception's quite heightened from being autistic. If I
Yeah.
can hear all of the conversations going on all the time around me, that becomes really overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's easier to ignore that if it's in Dutch
Yep.
because I have to focus to understand. But yeah, generally markets I do find pretty exhausting, and I find it exhausting because not only the people, but not in like a bad way, but just having to interact with so many people. But I think because crafting's quite a solitary thing, and because dyeing yarn itself and uh, in terms of other stall holders is quite a solitary thing. A lot of the people that go to these things, that's maybe only a handful of times in the year where they have to socialize with other crafters and other yarny people. So they're really keen to interact, and they're really keen to tell you their stories and tell you about their projects and ask you all the questions about the yarn, which can be lovely, but yeah, it becomes
Yeah.
overwhelming very quickly.
Yeah, I've that's similar to my experience too. And what would you say, like, because part of what I hope to see in the future is more of these events and festivals having more neurodivergent friendly supports available not just to the consumer but to the vendors. And so, like, what are some things that you would like to see from the festivals or the markets offering to assist neurodivergent business owners and vendors?
I think it may have been Flock, like the big. I think that's the big American one last year or a couple of years ago that did the whole uh, like an hour or 2 hours where people could shop with
Yeah,
masks on.
yeah,
Not only do I think that's a good idea in terms of the masking, in terms of protecting vulnerable people and disabled people, of which this community is quite highly populated with, any community really, but especially crafts. But I think also maybe making some time for uh, a neurodivergent friendly shopping hour would be
yep,
a really beneficial thing. And I think also maybe having separate spaces that are available away from people, that if things become overwhelming for people, they can sort of take a break. And
yep.
I know me and some other fellow stall holders, especially because there's quite a lot of people that are maybe coming specifically to see us that are neurodivergent, mentioned to us, and we always sort of say to them, if you're feeling overwhelmed and you want to have a seat, come sit behind my stall, and you don't have to talk to
Oh,
anyone. But
yeah,
the tricky thing is with doing that is that so many of these events, well, not so many of them, some of them are really ran to make a profit. So space itself is a premium, and obviously they have to pay for themselves. The space
right.
has to be rented from whoever the venue is from. But I think often in terms of people's priorities, unless it's sadly we're in a situation where unless it makes more money, it's not something they're going to implement, which means it kind of has to be pushed on them a lot to try and make sure that there is space for things like a little area that people could chill out in that doesn't have to be
Yep,
loud.
yep.
I think those kind of things could help, and just sort of, yeah, a bit more thought taken to accessibility in general. Because
Absolutely.
I have a tendency to end up fighting with people online, um, and but there's just a lot of shit. There's just a lot of shit that people do that don't think, and then what annoys me is then if you mention it to people and they have a really bad attitude about it. Because there was a yarn festival a while ago in the Netherlands that someone started who was kind of an influencer started, and basically the venue was not accessible at all. And as someone that's
Oh,
vended at yarn markets, there's tons of people in wheelchairs, there's tons of people with mobility aids, there's
yep.
tons of people with loads of disabilities that are part of this community, and they have as much right to attend these events in a way that's safe and responsible for them as anybody else does.
Yep.
So I had seen a few people specifically asking if the event was accessible wheelchairs, and there was no answer, and clearly they didn't really give a shit to answer.
Mm-hmm.
Until I was like, I'm going to start asking questions, and they reacted really badly to it. I think being open to having those discussions when issues like that arise is important as well, because of course organizing anything is really stressful, and trying to organize an event and get something like that off the ground is can be really expensive. It can be terrifying and a ton of work. So I can understand why people will be defensive of their events, but if someone says, "Well, can you just make sure that disabled people can attend?"
Yeah.
and your response is to you don't have a positive response to that, then I think you're probably part of the problem. So I think listening to disabled people and yeah, making sure that they're included in discussions of how you organize your event is always going to be the best first step in these things being improved.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and that's the thing too, is including disabled people in the planning of the events and stuff. But it's also I've experienced where it's almost like tokenism too. They're like, oh well, we have one of you on this like uh group or this panel or something, and it's like, yeah, but they don't speak for all disabled people.
Yeah.
And also, like, that's not a fail safe for you just because you have a disabled person involved in the planning doesn't mean that your event isn't inclusive and accessible. And I really wish more people, when we would come to them with accessibility concerns, that and it's just human nature, right? To get defensive and to almost like to get defensive and maybe even lash out a little bit. Like, I get that that's, so you see it as a perceived attack on your work of your planning of this event and stuff. But if you would just say, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't even think about that or something, like, I think if we could just come at things a little bit more with some grace. When I've brought accessibility concerns to people, that's how I wish they would respond. And so, and even I myself, I'm not always going to be thinking of, like, I'm not in a wheelchair, so I'm not thinking all the time about access to a ramp always or something. So, like, that's why it's important to gather that kind of feedback from other people and stuff when planning. So I wish that there would be a better response when you do come to someone with like accessibility and inclusion concerns. So, how do you think we as a community could do better in supporting neurodivergent business owners and stuff? Like, are there practices that you feel in the knitting community and stuff, or just the fiber arts community generally, that you wish we could get rid of or improve upon? Like, for me, I wish more patterns came with video tutorials for like newer techniques and stuff, because I'm a very visual learner.
Mm.
Sometimes I can't picture something in my head just based off of the way it's written. So like that's something that I wish I could see more of.
I think coming from a perspective of someone that dyes and sells yarn, I think for more local yarn shops and more designers to go and look out for creators within these communities that they purport to, to support and work with them. But
Hmm.
then you have the tricky thing of them too also being a small business that's trying to be viable in a market where perhaps a certain few big brands are actually what sells best for them.
Yeah.
And it's not always feasible, I suppose, for other businesses to maybe take on a brand or a smaller business as a supplier that's unknown. It is a small industry and it isn't a small industry in the sense of there's actually a lot of money and a lot of business going around, but it's a small industry in the sense of there's a lot of nepotism,
Yeah.
and that's not always necessarily a bad thing, but I think networking really is at the heart of a lot of the business is done,
Yes.
and that's something that's incredibly difficult for autistic people. If I go
Absolutely.
the last 2 years I've went to H&H, which is a huge trade fair, especially for yarn store owners and designers
Hmm.
and brands. So it's not open to the public. So there's one in Cologne, and then I think the other one's in Chicago, the American one.
Yeah.
The last 2 years I went there, and my God, some people go and they go, especially if you own a yarn shop, you'll maybe go for like the entire time because there's loads of different events on. But I went for like one day, and then like after half a day, I'm like, I need to leave.
Yeah.
And I don't really talk to people that much, so I just generally go out of interest. I'll go and have a look at different stands and stuff, and
Yeah.
uh, the actual networking part of it, I'm like, I can't make small talk with people that I don't have any knowledge of.
Yes. I'm like that too. And not only the small talk, but for me to walk up to someone and like give them my business card or something, I it just takes so much out of me.
Yeah.
Just that simple interaction. So networking and that kind of stuff does not come naturally to us, and it's very difficult. Not only does it not come naturally, but it's hard for us. We don't know how to engage in it a lot of times. And so if we can create a little community that is helping each other out, like what you were saying about like you and undercover otter and nocturne, you guys kind of like support each other, it sounds like. And
Yeah.
that is really wonderful to me that like you can team up instead of being like competitors and stuff. You're teaming up and you're helping each other out. And I love that.
Well, I think that's one of the things, especially as a yarn dyer. I sometimes will have people message me asking me things about yarn dyeing, whether it's about what equipment I use or what dye I'm using. And
Mm-hmm.
bar perhaps the exact recipe for something, I will tell people most things.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they ask nicely, and depending on the situation, sometimes I'll just give them a recipe for a colorway. If it's like
Mm-hmm.
another dyer, because I'm like, you just well just dye it yourself. If you
Yeah.
really want that color. Uh, so for me, I think we all do the same thing, but we all do it differently. And I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So the more better quality yarn that's out there and the more people doing interesting things, I think is better for the industry as a whole. But you have some dyers that really are hyper competitive to the point of not being very nice people that
Yeah.
treat everything that they do and how they create their products as some kind of mystical
Trade secret.
trade secret. And
Yeah.
then you also have some people that are just so competitive as in they won't even like recognize you or be nice to you in person. There's some dyers that one in particular I can think of that I've seen at markets maybe 5 or 6 times where I've had to stall at the same market. And this is someone that's been going for years here. And she not once has came and looked at my stall. And
Yeah.
then I'm like, it's not like these markets. There's thousands of stalls. There's maybe like 60 or 70 stalls, and
Yeah.
you walk around before the market, you walk around before it opens. She's not one. It's almost like she purposefully looks away from my stall.
And looks at all the other ones.
Yeah,
Oh,
and it's like I don't know whether I don't. Who knows why?
right.
Maybe I've done something to piss her off. Probably. Maybe. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
there's
Oh, yeah.
that is like weird ways of going about things that I'm like, I just don't have the energy for.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I just think, just don't be an arsehole.
I definitely feel that. So we talked about like some accommodations that would help you as a vendor, like having maybe a quiet space or like a space to decompress, and then maybe like the location of your actual booth. Would you say that that's something that would help too? Like putting your booth in a specific location or, well, because then that kind of hurts with visibility, I guess.
Yeah, and then you start to get into, I think then it becomes a very sort of tricky territory, especially because some people are very specific about events and where they want to be and who they want to be next and why.
Yeah.
Um, and some of it's a bit sort of casting stones of trying to foresee which is going to be the best spot. Um,
Yeah. Okay.
and
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time it's just luck, with as it is with most things.
Yeah.
Um, Generally, I don't. I think as long as event organizers are uh, open to certain requests. So a lot of the time, if me and uh, Undercover Otter, for example, are doing the same market, we'll send an email ahead and say, is it possible to get stalls next to each other? And it's just because then I'm not having to interact with someone that I don't know a lot that's right next to me. So
Right.
then you kind of have the freedom that if you need space, where because other artistic people just know as well, like like especially people you're friends with know that like they can tell you just leave you alone for 5 minutes, um,
Right.
and it gives you that freedom of then kind of being behind the stall is a bit your space, and then if you can choose to go out and interact with people in your own time.
Right. It isn't making it more accessible to you both because you kind of act as like each other's support person.
Yeah,
And like maybe, one of you can watch both booths while one of you like goes and decompresses. I think that that is a really great idea to just being open to those kinds of requests.
yeah.
Have you ever experienced like a lost opportunity because as a result of being neurodivergent, would you say?
I
Or a
wonder.
positive too. You could also, if there's something that you think, that positively contributes to your experience as a yarn dyer.
I think there is definitely a bit of both. I
Yeah.
think there's certainly because there is quite a lot of neurodivergent people that are crafters, then
Mhm.
I think lots of them are quite cognizant of trying to make sure or wanting to make sure that the people that they buy yarn from and things either understand that in the way that they go about their business, or they just want to support someone that's also autistic or whatever. But I think coming back to what we talked about networking, there's definitely been scenarios that I've been in which someone with a defter hand socially would have would have gained a lot more beneficial things out of certain situations than I've been in. Because there's been times that I've been at things where there's people that would be very good to rub shoulders with, and people that would be very good to have a chat with. That then I'm just like, and then I just kind of shut down. I don't know if you can hear my dog barking downstairs. She's
Oh, I was wondering if you'd bring her on. Yeah. I love your Instagram stories with her. Is her name Winnie? Is that?
yeah, yeah.
Yes. Which also I love that name.
She's named after Winifred Sanderson from Hocus Pocus.
Oh my God, I love that. Oh my God, that's amazing.
Hocus Pocus was literally like my special interest as a child.
Oh, I loved Hocus Pocus.
I
Oh
used to have it in a
man.
video and I would watch it, like literally I would, it was so autistic. Like I would watch it from the beginning and then rewind the VHS and then rewatch it like back to back for like days.
Yes, that's exciting. Yeah. I currently do that with the Pride and Prejudice movie with Keira Knightley.
Oh yeah.
That one because so I love the Jane Austen books, but there is that movie to me is like standalone. It's not that I love it because I think it's the best adaptation of the book. I love it as a standalone movie because the soundtrack, the scenery, it's all like very soothing to me. And
Yeah.
I will watch that over and over again. I've been doing that a lot lately because it's been a little rough over here in the States, if you I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do that too. But okay, so what's a project or a make that you are extremely like proud of? That you're like, wow, I this is awesome. And what's like a dream project for you to do like in the future with your business too?
I think in terms of something that I'm really proud of, it probably is things that I end up doing with other creative people. As I said before, I'm not a really creative person in a lot of ways. Like I don't draw, I don't paint, I can't do anything artistic other than dye yarn, which to me is always a question whether it's really artistic or whether it's more mechanical,
Oh,
um,
I
which is also very autism appropriate.
yes.
But I think yeah, my collaborations with other people. So this coming up soon, actually, me and Undercover Otter and now Nocturne Studio is joining. We'll be doing the Queerdo collection, which is the third year we've done that. So it's like uh, the three of us, but it's the idea is like a sort of mini collection between different queer dyers, for Pride Month. And
Yeah.
before I also did like last year I organized the Fagvent, which was like an advent with 5 different queer dyers, each dyeing like a skein for the week. So those things I really enjoy doing because I just it's nice to work with other people that have a different experience, but that were very much bound with the community. Because again, most of us were also on top of being queer, we're some kind of neurodivergent as well. So
Yeah.
those are kind of my favorite things to do.
I I was going to ask you about the I'm so glad you brought that up, the Advent countdown that you guys all did together. Now, that was you guys each contributed one colorway, right? So that
Yeah,
okay, I love that because I love the variety. I love that you can support more than one dyer,
yeah,
and also it's better for you guys in terms of comparing it to having to put together an entire advent by
yeah.
yourself
I
because
mean,
I know that that's so much work for dyers.
I won't fuck with advents that are minis.
Yeah.
For a couple of reasons. A, because I think a lot, well, for a vaguely bitchy reason, I think a lot of them end up being a bit crap because it's just too many colorways to try and put together in a functional palette without it becoming
Yeah.
too samey. Or at least when I imagine what I would do with it, that's what I would envision it ending up like. I also personally don't use minis for anything, so I'm always like, I have no interest in it myself, so I wouldn't make it.
Yeah.
Um, so anytime that I've done or I think about doing anything like it's like Advents, it's always like full skeins that I would rather do.
Yeah. Gotcha. That makes sense. I've gotten on the mini bandwagon just from a like budgetary perspective. Like when I go to festivals or like yarn crawls or something,
Yeah,
that's when I like to do the minis because I'll want to support a small business, but it's like I also have a budget, like I
yeah,
can't keep. So my thing that I've started doing now is if I go to an event or like a yarn crawl or something like that, I'll try and get minis from different people and then try to incorporate it into one project. That
mm,
way it's kind of like a nice memory of the event, but
yeah.
also able to support more than one person. And
I think that a
I
lot about yarn. Anytime I like, I'm the same. Anytime I go anywhere on holiday, or whatever, I always try and buy yarn from
yes.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, I call it souvenir yarn. Like
yeah,
some people get shot glasses, some people get t-shirts, and that's like I get souvenir yarn.
yeah. And then it's a much more fun souvenir, I think, than
Yeah, I think so too.
necessarily
Uh,
much keys.
but I loved that you guys came together and did that like Advent countdown thing. That I really loved that because that's also a way of making things more accessible for you guys too is
Yeah,
because instead of having to compete with the whole Advent thing, because I can't imagine the amount of work that goes into creating an Advent like that, like 24 colors, colorways. I mean, it's incredible. And the other thing too is I am so I'm autistic and I do not like unexpected things. And so for me, I want to be involved in the Advent process. I like the idea of it, but
yeah,
I can't handle the unexpected surprise. Like, and the thing is they are a lot of money because they are a lot of work.
yeah,
And in fact, I think in many ways they are underpriced, but so they're a lot of money for the consumer. They're a lot of work for the dyer. But I, so if I'm spending a lot of money, I need to know like what I'm spending that money on.
no, exactly. I
Yeah.
agree. I tend not to buy things like that
Yeah.
myself. I've done a few different kind of surprise boxes. Like I did one for Halloween, and uh,
Yeah.
currently I'm one's waiting to go out the door. That's about like different sheep breeds.
Yeah.
Um, so I like doing them, and what I always try and do as well is anytime if I do a new one, if I'm advertising it, I'll always include pictures of previous ones that I've done, so that
Yes.
people could at least see your track record.
Yeah,
And that's
like your
being advocacy,
portfolio.
yeah, because I think some people love the surprise of it, but then it's also you can give them a
Yes.
little bit of a taste of what it might be because otherwise, yeah, it's a lot of money to give away blind.
Yes, like that's what I wish more like with the Advent specifically, not because the mystery boxes and the mystery packs, those are cool if you know like generally what to expect. Like, oh, is this going to be a category of like reds or
Yeah.
blues? And like that to me is more digestible. I don't know if that's the right word, but the Advents, what I really wish is like there would be an opportunity for if you want to be surprised, the whole thing's surprise, but if you want to know what to expect, you can go and like click on this link or something. Like you have to work to go and see what it is. That way it doesn't
Yeah.
spoil the surprise for those people who do want the surprise, and then it makes people like myself have a hard time doing that. But do you have any like collections or special projects or something coming up that you're working on?
At the minute, no, which is a
Well,
bit
you have your
useless.
new yarn base.
Yeah, so I have my new yarn base, which is custom spun for me. So that's like a really sort of exciting achievement in a way.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's very much like a sort of capitalistic achievement because it means just basically you have the money to do it because it means you have to buy it like a ridiculous amount at once. But it's also really nice because it gives you the freedom to create something that yeah doesn't really exist otherwise. So
Yeah.
uh, my custom yarn base, which is pretty much I think all the yarn, most of the yarn behind me in this kind of region is all that, and it's called
Oh,
Casta lace. So it's like a heavy lace weight that's 50% Falkland Merino, 25% Gotland, and 25% Corriedale. And the idea is that you hold it double with itself, which is what I'm doing here. So you hold two strands together, and then
yeah.
it gives you like a sport weight.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
But I probably will be doing a themed collection at some point soon-ish. I have some kind of larger wholesale projects that I'm busy with that will take a good chunk of time. But when eventually when I have some more time to myself, the idea is to do some restocking, which I find very boring. Then I just always want to do something new. So I have like a new yarn base that I've ordered in for the autumn that I'm waiting to come. Uh,
Oh yeah?
there's always new things happening because
Yeah.
it is very much like that ADHD thing. I get bored very easily, so
Yeah.
it's always, it's always variations on a theme.
Yeah. Do you so the Costa lace is that more so because I'm very texture sensitive.
Yeah,
Is it more rustic or is it more soft, would you say?
I find that always a very tricky question. This I
Yeah.
would say is very soft. I'm not um I'm not sensitive at all when it comes to textures. Maybe it's certain things that I wouldn't necessarily want super close to my face, whatever, if it's like really rustic yarns.
Yeah.
This for me is pretty soft. It is non-superwash, so it still has a bit of bite and texture to it.
Okay.
Um, it's not a superwash ultrafine merino, so it's
Right.
got more woolly character than that.
Yeah.
So I do have some yarns that I like to work with that are incredibly soft. So I also have a base called Agnes, and that's like literally one of the softest yarns ever. It's like baby alpaca, silk, and cashmere.
Oh,
So it's like as soft as yarn as you're going to find anywhere. Um,
oh yeah.
but then I also like woolier wools. So I like a bit of everything. But this I would
Yeah.
say is kind of medium in the softness
Okay.
scale. But with Gotland, which is originally a Swedish sheep breed, you get quite a lot of luster. You can't really see it in this lighting's terrible, but you get quite a good luster with it, and it also has like a bit of a halo. So it's not
Yeah.
quite a halo that you would get on like a mohair or something, but it has a little bit of
Yeah.
fluff to it that catches the light as well. So it's a really nice yarn to work with.
I love those colors together. Mixing the holding those double. What are you making a sweater? What are you making there?
Yeah, I think it's called the something Imperador or something, and it's a sweater. The details will be on my Instagram because I've posted about it a few times.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's just like a top-down raglan, but then there's a really cute little cable in the back.
Okay.
In the back of the neck.
Oh, I love that.
I
I
know.
love that.
I'm kind of
Like,
sad that it's in the back. So then I'm like, because later on, the short rows to make the back obviously higher happen
uh-huh.
later on in the pattern. They happen at the bottom. So I'm tempted to do the short rows on what should be the front. So then the cable stays instead of in the back. The cable stays in the front. But I don't know.
Yeah.
There.
Oh, I love that. That's really cool. I really like clean modern designs, but they have like an accent of a cable or a lace or something. Like
Yeah.
I absolutely love blending kind of the traditional stuff with the modern. I love that.
I also like when they use traditional elements that are actually decorative. I think
Yes.
there are a lot of things, and it's happening it happens with everything, but there are a lot of things now that the default is then plain everything, but then you end up with sort of a ton of designers that then release a ton of patterns, even themselves that have a ton of patterns that are just plain sweaters.
Yeah.
And then I'm like,
Yeah.
how many plain sweater patterns do you need?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
I don't think everything needs to be unique, and I think especially for people that maybe have a favorite designer and stuff, it's
yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah.
nice to support them if they do have simpler patterns. But
Yes.
I mean, there are some designers that literally just have upwards of 20 designs for a stockinette sweater.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I get that I get part of that is just trying to make a living, that you have to keep pumping out patterns for people to buy them.
Yeah.
And they would say the same about me. They'd be like, how many times do you need to dye neon green vomit?
Yeah.
And which my answer would be, there's never enough times. But
Yes. What's the best way for people to keep up with you? Like newsletter, Instagram, Blue Sky, like what's the best way for people to keep up to date with you?
for me, it's Instagram is where I
Okay.
communicate pretty much everything. I do have a newsletter that if people want to sign up for, they can on my website, but I'm terrible at remembering that it exists. And of course, I would love to be off of meta platforms because they're horrible, soulless garbage.
Yep.
But I simply don't have the energy to start another social media platform. And I'm quite lucky that I have a decent-ish following on Instagram. So then I just kind of yeah. But that's the best
Yeah.
place to find me, and I'll often post pictures of what I'm up to and information there.
Okay, awesome. Instagram. It was really great to talk to you and
Nice to talk to you properly as well, and actually
y-
get to chat face to face a bit.
I love how easy, well, not easy, but you guys can get around a lot better with public transit over in Europe and the UK and stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm really envious of that. So, because
Well,
I do hold up to the autistic stereotype that I like trains. So, like,
well, that's also a thing about autistic stereotype when it comes to trains. As my studio is it's just kind of like an industrial unit. So, but the if you look out the window at the front of my studio, it looks onto the train track. So a lot of the time you just see a train go by like all the time, and I'm like, this is peak autism that I've now got a dye studio with like a train track to
can you
watch.
can you imagine if we did the like interview recording with you like the back to your window and like just a train was passing by?
It would
What we would
distract
do to the
so many
autistic
so many autistic people would be distracted by the trains.
we wouldn't be helping out the autistic like stereotype today. Yeah, that's the thing is I love trains, but I hate telling people that because I'm like I'm tired of all these stereotypes with autism and stuff. But yeah, the stereotype for me does hold up. I love trains. And so I watch a lot of that YouTube channels about train travel in Europe,
Yeah.
in the UK. And so it's like a dream of mine to go over to Scotland and do there's a train that goes up to the Highlands. It's called oh God, now I can't remember the name of it. Not the Caledonia, although that is one of them.
I think the Caledonia Sleeper is the one that goes from. I think the Caledonia Sleeper is the one that goes to London, but I might be wrong. But yeah, I know what one you mean. The one that I know exactly what train you mean.
Yeah.
'Cause I used to go on that route a lot, not on the specific, there's a specific steam train that you can go, it's more for tourists, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's
I know,
definitely a tourist
yeah.
thing. Yeah. Oh yeah, I would be full on tourist over there. Yeah, it's like where they take you to distilleries and then they have like outings and stuff. Yeah, it looks really cool. I can't remember the name of it, which is so funny because it's like a massive like dream of mine to go and do that, but hopefully someday my husband and I we can get over there and come and visit you guys and the Netherlands and go yarn shopping, and that's really the goal to do, like to go yarn shopping.
That is the goal, to go anywhere and then find out what yarn shops are nice and go there.
Yeah.
And find out which ones are not nice and avoid those.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Oh man. Well, thank you so much, Ross, for doing this, and thank you for being like my first guinea pig and stuff. I really appreciate that.
Thank you
And
for asking me. I appreciate
yeah.
that as well. And it's been nice to chat with you.